sounds sensible. So we're not making... No, there's a recommendation from the trust. I don't see whether there's an actual conflict. No. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, it's not my decision on whether you feel conflicted or not. Okay, excellent. We'll just keep moving forward then. So Sam, could you give us just a brief summary?
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, sure. So the Men's Welfare Charitable Trust received a bequest many years ago, and it's been slowly accumulating in the trust accounts, and it's currently $690,000. But because of the low interest environment, it's not returning a lot to the trust. So the committee, which 2 councillors here are on as representative, and a whole lot of representatives from social agencies, discussed the best use of it. Staff recommendation was to use it as grants over a 5-year period to help those experiencing hardship and distress. Others on the committee felt it could be invested to give long-term return, with one possibility being into community housing to also increase housing stock in that area in Christchurch. So the report in front of you has the committee recommendation to asking council to ask staff to investigate investment options, and there's also a staff recommendation as discussed to use it as grants. So should council go ahead and choose to ask staff to investigate investment options, a report would return in a few months' time with some of those options and the option to distribute the bequest as grants over 5 years' time for you as a council to decide the way forward, and then the committee would go ahead and continue on with that delegation.
Thank you. And when could you get that information back to us?
We're hopeful we could come back in at the July meeting.
Which is our next meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Jake?
I guess a small matter. Why have you sought to write a report to ask us for permission to go investigating different options as opposed to just investigating the options and then bringing it back?
Twofold. One is it can take quite a lot of staff time and work, and therefore if we go ahead and do all that investigation and discover that council have no interest in the Men's Welfare Charitable Trust making an investment, then that's been a pointless body of work. So we wanted to get the direction of council. It's your delegation rather than the committees, and with it we'd go ahead and do that work, but we didn't think it was worthwhile putting that work in if it didn't have any interest to you as councillors.
Thank you. Tim?
As this originally came, and so Part C is what we discussed with regards to changing the initial, with which was investing it into social housing. Would we not be better just to get some feedback on the economics or the investment environment at the moment, and then that be brought back to council? Because originally this was to invest into social housing, which obviously we've changed it. So rather than a report, could we not get some? We've got Christchurch NZ, which have apparently have a very good feel of the investment cycles. We've also got CCHL, which could actually give some very good information to our staff. I'm just wondering about that. I mean, this has just happened this morning, the changes. Sure.
So that would be part of a report to include back to you the investment environment, okay, and that would inform the actual decision in July. Thank you.
Pauline?
Yeah, Sam, can I just ask, in the report you say you received 750 requests for support in 2019-20 year,
yep,
totalling 358,800 of the grants. How much did the requests total?
It's not quite that simple because we don't ask for a specific amount. What are you requesting? Yep. It'll be a bit variable. Say, for example, a typical request might be a highly overdue power account, yep, which has been increasing, sometimes upwards of $2,000 owing, and we'll work with that person and with some other agencies to try and, to ensure they don't get their power disconnected, and we might grant, say, $600. So I couldn't tell you exactly what the requests were for because people don't come with a set amount, they just come with their distress, and we seek to assist. So are you turning people away because of lack of funds, or do you find that the fund is sitting about right? No, it's pretty well balanced in terms of what we've got coming in on an annual basis and what we're granting out. But there is greater need out there, but we control the point of request. It has some funnel to it. With greater funds, we could increase that funnel and increase the amount we're giving out.
Because currently, what are you bringing in from the dividends and strengthening communities is it 300 and something?
It varies, but it's around about 350,000.
It's quite close to what you're
Yes, it
putting
is.
out.
Thanks to your directors' fees and the strengthening communities grant.
So you wouldn't be dipping into the bequest money very much every year?
We're not no, because we currently that's set aside and under kind of a different delegation, so we don't dip into
Not
it
using
other
it at
than the
all.
small amount of interest that is returned.
Yeah.
However,
So-
the decision from council could change the way the committee, distributes grants to help more people, because we then could dip into it.
Yeah.
Should that decision be made?
Yeah, and just one more question, if I may. With the government's winter power grants, are you seeing less people having to come for power? Would you anticipate you'd see less people? Because that's a reasonably generous amount, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it changes maybe the timing a little bit. So we're seeing people now because it hasn't kicked in yet. And then what we find in winter, we often do a little bit more in the firewood space than in the power. And then once that winter fuel package comes off, it can kick back in again for people. So yeah, it does change it a little bit, but still some people get themselves they find themselves in a really difficult situation, and that winter fuel package isn't enough to get them out. So that we still see that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yep, James, happy to move?
Yeah, happy to move.
The recommendations are up there now?
The recommendations are up there now.
Okay.
With and you've got the second tea and fill pot in one now too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a seconder, Jake? Any debate? No, in that case, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. No, I wanted to just say that the committee is supportive of this because we're aware of the growing need. People are coming to the Mayor's Welfare Tour Taupua, which means support, and that need is only going to increase. So there's that tension between being able to respond to that need, but also to sustain the fund so that we can continue to respond in the future. So this is about investigating options for maintaining the fund. So I'm really happy that it's going to be supported today, and we look forward to the report. But I'd also like to acknowledge the work that Sam and Brian Pegler do in this space. Brian particularly is the front person and deals with those who come needing assistance, and is incredibly compassionate and supportive, and I feel very proud to be chair of this committee. We do some great work. So thanks, Sam.
That's great. Tim?
Thank you, and I'm really happy to support this because I think this is what it should have been in the beginning, to invest, to look at any and all investment processes with regards to increasing the amount available to the needy and who requires it, rather than just concentrating on social housing, which it was originally. So I'm really pleased to support this.
Thank you. Yanni, then Andrew?
I'm happy to support this, although I do think, I hope this doesn't mean that we don't look at the housing. Just to show you the housing register from 2018, 10,000 people, gone up to 22,000 December 2020. So there's a massive need for housing, social housing, affordable housing, community housing in our city and in our country. So I just wanted to, say that I think we should certainly be looking at what we can do. But I think this is sensible that we look at what's the best option to create a sustainable income source for the Mayor's Welfare Fund, which will grow in need and demand. And currently just having money sitting in a bank getting very little interest is not really a very sensible use of that resource. So I welcome this and support it.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. A sustainable approach would definitely suggest considering investing this for the long-term benefit of the fund, rather than simply distributing as grants at the current time, although I accept and respect the comments made by Anne around the tension that definitely does exist there, and I think it's important that we keep the distribution option alive to consider once we've got this report back. A sensible approach would be to consider all reasonable and viable investment options, which should, in my view, consider investing in social housing if that is a secure investment with reasonable returns, and I'm sure that's something that will be considered. The key is that this is about investing sensibly for the long-term benefit of the fund. If there can be a follow-on benefit for social housing that delivers additional social outcomes, then that's something that I certainly would welcome. I think it's important to note that this report and the recommendation is simply asking for the investigation to be done. We're not making an investment decision today. I welcome the results of the investigation coming back to us so that we can look at all of the options that puts in front of us, so that we can then choose to invest for the benefit of the fund, and so that the great work that the Mayor's Welfare Fund is able to bring about is able to continue.
Thank you. Anyone further? No, in that case, I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? No, declare that carried. Thank you very much.